Hello, pup parents, and welcome to today's episode of Dogs with Devin. My name is Devin, and today I'm excited to be talking to you about the teenage phase, as many people call it. If you're not familiar with what that is, essentially it's a time period in your dog's or puppy's, more so your puppy's life where they seem to kind of digress or they're being quote unquote rebellious. If you're watching me on YouTube, you saw me actually do the air quotes. I say that because I don't think it's typically a lot of rebellion, and we're going to talk about that. But again, it's typically in the ages of like 6 months to 12 months, sometime in there, maybe a little before, maybe a little after, where your dog will kind of seem to get rebellious and they won't listen as well, and maybe they're acting a little crazier, and who knows, it just seems to be like an awful time for pup parents. Understandably, because when your dog isn't listening to you and when they're not focused and you can't seem to break through and get them to communicate with you, it can be super, super frustrating. So we're going to talk about a couple reasons why this might be happening and then a couple ways or a few ways to fix it. So as to why it's happening, I wouldn't chalk it up too much to like, oh, my dog's just hitting a certain age and they know in their mind that they want to rebel like they're an actual teenager, right? Like a human. I don't think it's so much that. I think there's a couple of main reasons. Number one, a lot of times when dogs get to that 6, 7, 8, 9 months age, us as pup parents, we start to think, oh, they have, practiced a successful come when called multiple times, or they know how to go potty outside. They've done it many, many times, or, insert any specific behavior. And, you think, oh, well, they've done it before. I'm probably fine. And so we give them too much trust. I think that is honestly, and I say this in the kindest way possible because I've been there, I've done this, I have made this mistake multiple times, and that's you give them too much freedom too early on. You think, okay, they're 6, 7, 8 months old and we've been practicing training every day and we've been very consistent, and they're, have things picked up. Some behaviors, 70, 80, 90% or more of the time they're doing them successfully. And so you think, okay, I can give a little bit more freedom. I can, leave them free roam in the house while I'm gone for just 30 minutes, or, they can hold it a little bit longer. I don't need to let them out as often, whatever it might be. We give them too much freedom and it bites us in the butt, or sometimes literally our dog bites us in the hand or the face because we think they know not to bite, but they haven't fully learned the behavior. And so that's kind of mistake number one that I see from pup parents, is giving too much freedom too early on. In all reality, you are probably better off to just stick with like the really strict schedule, stick with the really strict, not having full freedom in the house, that type of thing, for at least a year, at least. And that's, I say 1 year old, but in reality, it's probably better if you do that for 1 year of having your dog. So if you got them at 3 months old, you should wait until you've had them for a year. So they're about, 15, 16 months old, that type of thing, before you're really giving them a lot of freedom, before you're really expecting them to accomplish these behaviors that you've been training them on. Because training, it's kind of like a numbers game, right? Like you're just trying to make as many repetitions as possible in the correct way, right? You're trying to ingrain and reinforce those positive behaviors as many times as possible. And it's just the truth that after only 3, 4, 5 months of training, even if you're doing it a lot and consistently, you're probably not quite there as to where your dog totally understands. Those are my dogs barking. You hear that? Someone must be here. They stopped. Oh. Now they're running over to the door. We're going to continue. Giving too much freedom. So that's a mistake right there. And by the way, I want my dogs to bark if they hear someone outside. I can go over, tell them stop. Or like this situation, they stopped on their own. But I digress. Let's continue. So another reason is often that in this time period of the 9 months old or so, we start to get lazy with our training. We think, hey, kind of similar to point number one, hey, they've been pretty good with this behavior. I probably don't need to train it every day, or I probably don't need to be training as long every day. And so naturally they kind of digress in their training because we slow down, because we think, hey, they're getting older, they're starting to handle it more, they're fine. I don't need to train as often. And it's a mistake, and it causes this digression. It causes us to think, oh, my dog's just not listening to me. They're rebellious. Again, there might be a little bit of that, but I wouldn't rely on that as your reason as to why your dog is not listening to you. They probably just don't understand well enough yet. Okay, so how do we fix it, right? There's no point in me just telling you why it's happening. Let's talk about how to fix it. So the first way is to start treating your 9 or 10 or 11-month-old puppy that's having this teenage rebellious phase. Teach them and treat them like they're a 3-month-old puppy. It kind of sounds weird, right? But go back to a super strict schedule. Go back to, being very, very rigid with how much freedom that they have in the house, or where they're allowed to go, or, the scheduling with the potty breaks, all that stuff, whatever the specific problem behavior might be. Kind of take a step back to what you were doing when they were 3 months old. And you will, I guarantee, immediately see results, because if you're not allowing them into these situations in which they're causing problems and doing these rebellious things, they're not going to happen. And so regaining control of the situation is going to be one of the most important things that you can do. And I don't mean you're controlling your dog or anything forceful like that. It's just, you're the pup parent. You kind of dictate where they go and what they're allowed to do and how they're allowed to interact with people. So just kind of take a step back, pull the reins in, and just get control a little bit more. And then the next thing would be to recommit to training. So you might be listening to this and saying, I'm already doing that. And if you are, great. But a lot of pup parents in your situation, in the teenage years, teenage phase of rebellion with their puppy, they have neglected training, or they have just at least digressed. So recommit, put in the time, put in the effort, and stay consistent. And again, you're going to see immediate results for your pup in their ability to listen to you. And back to kind of one of the earlier points about giving too much freedom, that can mean that, even during your training sessions, you might need to take a step back and go back into the house. For example, if your dog is really, really struggling with recall, they might not have it down well enough. And so you need to go back inside the house and really get it nailed down again there, and then go back to being outside. Just don't expect them to take, to be farther than they might be. It's okay. Every dog learns at a different pace, and that's totally fine. So yeah, recommit to having those extended training periods and to taking a step back in your training if you need to. And then another point would be, and again, it's repetitious and we talk about it so much, and there's a reason for that, but it's exercise, especially in this phase. Like, I think a lot of it is they're kind of growing, and they're like going out of puppy stage and they're going into that like dog stage a little bit. And so there's a lot of physical growth that's happening. And so they kind of need more exercise. You need to up the amount that you're doing, or, change up what you're doing. Maybe, the specific exercise you've been doing for them is boring for them, or it's not enough. So, giving them new things to do, giving them new opportunities to just get their wiggles out, for lack of a better word. And especially in this teenage phase, I think it's a great time to like reinstate puppy play dates if you stop doing those, or trying to do them more often. Just giving them the proper exercise and mental and physical stimulation and exercise that they need. It'll make a world of difference, because it's not like if you are doing the training, the exercise is really kind of like a catalyst for that to like set in and for it to be successful for you. Because if your dog is always wired and is always just way overexcited because they're not getting enough exercise, it's going to be hard to train them, and it's going to be hard to overcome the rebellion and the not listening and really kind of reel that back in. So I hope these tips help. Again, just a quick recap. 2 reasons probably why your dog is being quote unquote rebellious is, number 1, you have been lulled into a sense of security by your dog potentially, and you've given them too much freedom. And number 2 would be, you maybe you've maybe stopped training them as much as you should be. So those are 2 reasons. 3 ways to fix it. Number 1, start treating them like a 3-month-old puppy again. Go back to the basics. Go back to square one if you need to with whatever the problem behavior is that, is happening with your pup right now. Another second way to fix this is to recommit to those extended training periods, taking a step back in your training and just being being ready to understand that, maybe they have digressed, or maybe they're not as far along as you thought they were, and that's okay. So stick with it and be consistent. And number 3 would just be to, up the amount of exercise that they need. They're growing, especially I think it's a very clear, we can see the correlation that, the time frame in which they're quote unquote becoming rebellious or seeming crazy or seeming to have so much energy is when they're growing and they're getting bigger, and so they need more exercise. So if you implement these things, it might not be perfect. You still might have a puppy that is a puppy, and that is life, and you should enjoy it because it's fun, because eventually your dogs get old and they maybe don't want to play as much, and they're way fun when they're puppies. I know it can be frustrating, but just remember to enjoy the moments. I hope that you liked this. I hope that you found some value in this and you can apply it to your life right now as a pup parent. If you did find it helpful, please, if you're watching on YouTube, like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Share it with your friends, whatever you want to do to get the word out. If you're listening on a podcast, please subscribe, leave a review, leave a review. I look at all of those. And if you have any questions, you can email me. I will respond to you. I'm looking at you and telling you I will respond to you. Email dogswithdevin, DEVIN, @gmail.com, and I will respond to your question. Or if you have an idea for another podcast, I love seeing that as well. So again, I hope you enjoyed this. Go out, implement these tactics, take a step back, regain kind of control, maybe give some less freedom, and keep fighting through the quote-unquote teenage years with your dog, and I promise you it'll be worth it. Man, I can like vividly remember when one of my dogs, Sunny, she hit like a year old, and it was like a switch went off almost. Like she just totally mellowed out. Like she's still a dog, and she was still hyper and had energy and wanted to exercise and be fun and all that good stuff, but it was like a switch was flipped. I don't know if earlier I said flip switch, so I do that a lot, whatever. But so stick with it. It will be worth it. Again, thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed this. And above all, go love your dog. Thanks for watching, guys.